Thursday, June 2nd, 2022. I hereby declare this meeting of the Howell Township Planning Board to be open. Adequate notice having been given pursuant to the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Act in the following manner. First, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was mailed to the Asbury Park Press and the Tri-Town News. Second, on January 7th, 2022, a copy of said notice was hand-delivered to the clerk of the Township of Howell. Third, on January 7th, 2022, said notice was posted in the office of the Planning Board and on the bulletin board in the Howell Township Municipal Building, 4567 Route 9, Howell Township, New Jersey. Members of the public will have a chance to ask questions and comment on applications once the chairman opens the hearing up to members of the public. If you wish to ask questions or comment, you will need to use the raise your hand feature and we'll bring you into the meeting one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability. You will be sworn in and need to give your name and address. For anyone calling in, you can press *9 to raise or lower your hand, *6 to mute or unmute yourself. This meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Township TV 77. Thank you.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Mr. Bavai?
Here.
Mr. Cristiano?
Here.
Mr. Dorado's been excused. Mr. Greenfield?
Here.
Mr. Husser's been excused. Mr. Nicastro?
Here.
Mr. Seaman's been excused. Councilman Bonovich? I have not heard from. He's absent. Mr. Spanville?
Here.
Ms. Talente?
Here.
And Chairman Tannenhouse.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance in a moment of silence for all of our first responders and those both serving here and abroad. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
justice for all.
Thank you. So for those that missed the Memorial Day service down there in Soldier Field, it was a pretty good event for those that missed it. I'd like to thank all those that participated. We have any approval of minutes?
No minutes this evening.
Any vouchers?
No vouchers this evening.
Correspondence, please.
I don't have any letter from Mr. Pape, but his application for AAFRHW Property LLC was scheduled for tonight. And then one of his professionals had a conflict. So we asked that this application be carried to June 16th, 2022 with no further notice.
We need an extension of time or we're good?
No, we're good till August. And I did put that on the agenda, but if you just want to make an announcement that it's carried, that would be great.
Steve?
Okay, if anybody's here for case number SP 1095 AAFRHW Property LLC, that application is not going to be heard this evening. It's going to be carried on notice to the board's regular scheduled meeting of June 16th, 2022 at 7 p.m. It'll be Zoom just like this evening, and no further notice published or mailed will be provided.
Thank you.
I also have a letter from Grace Chun. She is the attorney for Monmouth Solar One LLC. And she asked that this application be carried to the next available hearing date and granted the board an extension of time till the end of August 2022. I since spoke to her after that, and she asked that they please be carried to July 21st with no further notice.
And we have room on the agenda for that?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, if anybody's here for case number SP 1099 Monmouth Solar One LLC, that application is not being heard this evening. That application is being carried on notice to the board's regularly scheduled meeting for July 21, 2022 at 7 p.m. It will likely be by Zoom, but please check the township calendar website or the posting wall to confirm that it will be by Zoom and not live. So again, Monmouth Solar One will be heard on July 21, 2022, 7 p.m. No further notice, mailed or published, will be provided.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the only other item I have is I did send out links to all the board members with 10 ordinances that the council introduced at their last meeting. And they are scheduled for public hearing and adoption on June 14th, which is before our next regularly scheduled meeting. And therefore we need to comment on them this evening.
Okay, great. Do we want to go through the rest of the, whether we have resolutions, submission waivers, or
Got nothing.
any applications?
I have no resolutions, I have no submission waivers, and I have no applications.
Okay. Without further ado, then let's get into the ordinances.
So, Mr. Chair, if you'd like, I can just kind of roll through them.
You can. I know I've got comments on at least the one.
Okay.
Are we going to vote on them one at a time or all?
I think so. Steve, that's up to you. What do you think? One at a time?
I don't think that's necessary. I mean, if the board can vote on them all together, unless the board really feels they want to deliberate individually.
Just a quick shake of heads. I have no reason to vote on them independently. Does anybody else? Board?
No.
Okay.
So do you want me to run through them and then you can give me whatever comments you have on whichever number it is?
Yes, please, go ahead.
So before we even start, this process is simply to determine consistency with our master plan. And then it will go back to the governing body for a public hearing on the 14th, Eileen, is that what you just
Yes.
said? So as all you guys were here in the first meeting in May, we just did the land use element of the master plan. So I would submit, and I'm going to go through them individually, but globally, I would submit that every single one of these ordinances is direct implementation of a recommendation as part of that master plan process. None of these ordinances are outside of the scope of that master plan. That being said, Ordinance 2221 is amending the definition section of our ordinance to include the definitions for a number of uses that are come directly out of recommendations of that land use element amendment that was approved in May. Ordinance 2022, if you remember, there were a number of uses that we created as conditional uses. This establishes those conditional use standards for those uses that are conditional in certain zones, not necessarily permitted and absolutely not prohibited, just conditional in certain circumstances, and these are the conditions that go along with those uses. And again, that's direct implementation of a recommendation out of our master plan. Ordinance 2223 establishes the SED1 zone and the different uses that would be permitted in that SED1 zone. Again, direct recommendation. Ordinance 2224 identifies the lot and block numbers of those properties that are being zoned from SED to SED1. If you remember, we broke it into SED1 and SED2, depending on where in town it's located. And those block and lot numbers are included in the land use element as well. Ordinance 2225 establishes the criteria for the SED2, which is kind of like the lighter SED. And those recommendations, again, came right out of the master plan. Ordinance 2226 are those lots that are being rezoned to SED2, one of which is ARE6, the balance which is SED, and those lot and blocks are included in the document as well. Ordinance 2227 are those properties that are having the overlay, the SED2 overlay included with the ARE6, which is the Yellowbrook Road area, and those block and lots, again, came right out of the master plan land use element amendment. Ordinance 2228 identifies or creates the zone HD4 and the uses associated in that zone. As you recall, that's up along 33, and again, comes directly out of the master plan. Ordinance 2229 are those lots that got zoned HD4, some of which are SED, some of which are HD2, some of which are ARE6. Again, all those lots are included in the document. And last but not least, Ordinance 2230 modifies the provisions in the HT3, moving some uses to conditional uses in the zone, and again, directly out of the land use amendment that we just passed in May. So I know that was kind of quick to get through that, but I would submit, I know there's 10 of them. Every single one of them came right out of that master plan that we went through that public hearing a month ago. And as such, I would recommend that the board render a finding that it is substantially consistent with our master plan.
Thank you. So unless someone else has comments, my comments were for ordinance 02222.
Okay,
If you could just open that up, please, Jen.
sure.
And it has to do with the extra bushes that we talked about for, the automotive uses.
Hold on, let me get to it.
You had
For the automobile repair service.
right. Remember how they had the storage of the cars behind a fence, and then they had a requirement to have bushes and vegetation in front of that fence?
Yes,
And then we said, well, why are we not doing that for the trade contractors and the landscape business
yep,
designation?
I do remember that, yep.
And that did not get into this.
Okay, I'll make
ordinance.
that recommendation.
Other than that, that was it.
Okay. That's, I wouldn't consider that substantive, would you, Steve?
That's an interesting question, Jen. Some people are of the opinion that if you change anything other than punctuation, that's a change that requires reintroduction. But if it's so de minimis and it really doesn't change the scope of the ordinance, it's up to the town attorney to decide whether they want to reintroduce that particular ordinance.
Okay, I'll let them know, but I will say that this, the chairman is correct, that this is direct, this recommendation was put in on the record at the master plan hearing as well.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I got.
I mean, again, for purpose of what we're doing tonight, we're deeming it consistent with the master plan. It just may be the note that the drafting needs to be tightened up to better reflect the master plan.
Sure. Yep, that's all I have. So if you guys
Okay.
don't have any other questions, I would respectfully request a finding of substantial consistency.
Okay, if there's no other questions from the board, I'll entertain a motion that the ordinances presented, other than the comment that I made, are substantially consistent with the master plan.
I'll make the
So
motion.
moved. Go ahead, Joe, you made the motion. I'll second it.
I'll make a second.
Roll call.
Yes, please.
Mr. Bavai,
Yes.
Mr. Cristiano. Joe?
I think he may be frozen. No, you just muted
Muted.
yourself, Joe.
Okay, I got a verbal thumbs up. Mr. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Nacastro,
Yes.
Mr. Spanville,
Yes.
Ms. Talente,
Yes.
and Chairman Tannenhouse.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Since there's nothing else on the agenda, is there anything else that needs to be discussed? Is there anything moving forward with our master plan committee?
No, not at this time, Brian, but I don't want to speak for Paul, but I just want to note one thing I think is important. And I don't think I've ever seen it, but since the element was completed and Jen had a big part in this, I've never seen so many ordinances that were just recommended out of the master plan come to fruition by the governing body. And Jen, again, I know you worked hard on helping draft some of these ordinances with a lot of the staff in the town, but this is pretty impressive that we got 10 ordinances from recommendations from the master plan so quickly coming from the governing body. That's pretty impressive.
They must have felt it was important, Mr. Nacastro.
I'm sure they did.
Okay, anything else? With that being said, I'll make a motion for adjournment.
Yeah, I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Everyone have a great night.
You too.
Thank
Great
you.
seeing everybody.
Thanks, everybody, for coming out.
Bye, guys.
Good night,
Bye-bye.
everybody.